Hi, I'm Kowalski. Today I'm going to do an unscripted reaction video to the ABC's short segment, Courtney Act Answers Kids' Questions About Gender, which is part of their series, Little Kids Big Talk. So here we can see on the screen we have a female impersonator, Courtney Act, whose real name is Shane Janek, and he's quite interesting in that he does appear, he's famous as Courtney, but he is also quite open about being Shane and the fact that he invented this Courtney persona as sort of a way to deal with feeling shy and anxious, and almost as a way of dealing with like internalized homophobia and coming to terms with being a gay young man in a rural area. And that comes up when he actually speaks to the kids. Shane Janek, or Courtney Act, is a real favourite of the ABC. They love to get him out as Courtney, and it's an interesting choice of performer to talk to kids about gender. So if you actually go to the Courtney Act website, Courtney or Shane is featured in sort of fetish lingerie gear, in quite explicit poses. He's definitely an adult entertainer, and his blog entries, I've read a few of his blog entries, and they talk about dieting and they talk about popping pills in order to maintain your slim figure. It's a really interesting choice for the ABC to make. I mean, these are the people that bought us Play School, for example, the beloved and highly trusted children's program. Okay, on with the show.
Actually a wig.
I knew that.
You knew that?
I knew that.
Yeah?
That's what I said. I think it's fake.
Have you ever worn a wig?
No.
That's an interesting question to ask children. And it's funny that, if this was coming from maybe a clown or a pantomime character or an actor who was showing how they create characters using wigs and using costumes, I might have taken that question more innocently. But coming from a man who is dressed in a highly sexualized caricature of womanhood, it seems a little skeevy, to be honest. I may be the only one who gets that impression, however. I don't think so. Let me know.
No.
It's real.
It's real.
Can't
take that off.
Little kids. Big talk. Gender.
Now again, if I was going to talk to kids about gender, this is such an interesting choice that the producers have made to put a male dressed in a sexist caricature of womanhood in a position to inform small primary school age children about gender. If I was going to talk to kids about gender, who might we have on? We might have on a female scientist, or somebody who plays mixed doubles tennis, and they can talk about the differences between men and women. Or we could have men and women who do the same job, and they could talk about the pros and cons of male versus female doing the same job. Or we might talk about sexual equality. So we might have, Australia's first and only female Prime Minister, for example. We might talk about her achievements. We might talk about what are the differences between men and women and what are the similarities. But instead we have a man who is standing in as the expert on both the male and the female experience. Now that is very interesting because Shane Janek is not an expert on either the male or the female experience. He's an adult entertainer.
Hi, I'm Milo. Hi, Courtney. My name's called Lockie. Hi, my name's Isabella. What's yours?
My name is Courtney Isabella. It's lovely to meet you today.
It's lovely to meet you too. I love your makeup.
Thank you. I love the bow on your hair. It's very cute.
Thank you. I like your dress, Courtney.
Thank you very much. It's really fun and colourful.
I like all the rainbows.
Yeah, same.
So it's an interesting little plug for the rainbow flag. So this is grooming, I believe. This is where we start to introduce these little elements to kids in a harmless way and almost without context. So I like your makeup, Courtney. Oh yes, I like your bow. We create an equivalence between things that signal the feminine. And I like the rainbow. Yeah, me too. You know, it's not an accident that Courtney is decked out in a rainbow flag. This is presenting the symbols of a movement without presenting the content to these children, which is really grooming. Now the kids are going to ask some questions of Courtney.
When you dress up as Courtney, did people treat you differently to when you're Shane?
They do actually. It's quite
I wonder why people might treat him differently when he's dressed up as Courtney versus being dressed up as Shane. I wonder if there's any reason why we tend to treat males and females differently in society. And not only that, but they're going to use this to make a point about gender and try to extrapolate that to a point about sexism. But let's have a look at it. Shane Janek, when he presents as himself, as Shane, he's quite unadorned. He wears just a normal t-shirt and short hair. He looks very normal. When he is dressed up as Courtney, he presents as a strikingly tall, elevated in high heels person who has on a wig and layers of pancake makeup and a diva gown that is going to trip him over, right? This is during the day. I wonder why people might treat this figure differently. This is obviously a performer. When someone sees a performer out in public like this, they wonder, oh, what's going to happen? Is there a show? Is there a photo shoot? It's not unusual or unrealistic to think that we might treat Barbie here differently to the way we treat Ken. And it's not sexist.
quite interesting because when I'm dressed up as Shane, I don't know if this is me when I'm.
Yeah, so this is him. I mean, he's obviously quite an attractive lad, but he just looks very normal and unadorned. He's wearing nice pastel colours. You know, you would pass him by in the supermarket and think, oh, there's an attractive boy, right? Whereas when we look at Courtney with all of the makeup and the wig and the dress, it's so over the top. There's a sense of festivity there, right? Something's going to happen.
Not dressed like this, and so I present looking like a boy, and people treat me differently, regardless of how I look. The world looks the same to me, but sometimes people look differently and react differently to me depending on how I'm dressed.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So he did say there how I present, and again, that's part of the grooming. That's bringing the language in, saying I'm presenting in a certain way. That is introducing the children to the idea that you can have a gender presentation, which is distinct from a gender identity, which is distinct from your sexed body. And then he says, no matter what I look like, the world looks the same to me. Now, that's quite an interesting little insight, isn't it? And I've been mulling over, what does this actually mean? And I think it's an attempt to sort of shame us for taking note of the way somebody dresses, right? Whereas it's actually a very smart thing to take note of the way other people are dressed. So, if you go to a religious community, people might be wearing a religious uniform, like a cassock, for example. You take note of that, you take note of the context, and you look at the consequences. You look at how they behave, right? And you behave accordingly with appropriate respect. If someone's dressed like Shane here, you might think, oh, look, it's time, we're going to have a party or something's going to happen. Whereas I think what he's trying to say here is that no matter how he's dressed, we should always have the same reaction to him. Well, I'm sorry, no. If I go somewhere and everybody's wearing protective personal equipment, for example, maybe a face mask, I might think to myself, wow, is there some sort of infectious disease that I need to be worried about? And I might try to protect myself accordingly. It's not appropriate to simply mind your own business and not take note of the way people are dressed and the way that people are acting.
Why is all drag queens so beautiful?
Oh.
Because there is something beautiful in those female stereotypes. Drag queens, it's funny, not all drag queens, some of them look a little bit ridiculous, but say drag queens try to ape these standards of beauty that are modelled on woman as a beautiful object, right? So they're not necessarily aping women, but they're trying to recreate the vision, this ideal, beautiful vision of a beautiful woman as a beautiful object. And one of the critiques that we've had about beauty standards for such a long time is that they might be pleasant, but they're actually unattainable and unrealistic. And when you see videos, there are videos out there of Janek getting dressed to become Courtney Act, and he will do his makeup. He'll take like 4 or 5 hours to do his makeup to transform himself into this beautiful object. Yeah. Drag queens look beautiful because they sacrifice doing other things in their day to turn themselves into beautiful caricatures of unrealistic beauty standards for women.
Wow, well, that's a very lovely compliment to all the drag queens. And I think the cool thing about drag is that it's about expressing how you feel. And I think that there's something really beautiful about people being themselves.
Okay, so the really cool thing about drag isn't something that we should be talking about with kids, okay? If we look at what these kids are wearing, they're wearing shorts, they're wearing just pretty gender neutral clothes for the most part. They just look like normal kids. And when we talk about drag to children, they lack the context around, well, hopefully they lack the context around the rigid standards of masculine and feminine dress. They lack the context that's created, that is required to actually understand what makes drag subversive and cheeky and funny to grown-ups, right? And so Courtney describes it as just expressing yourself. So yeah, it's wonderful. It's lovely to see people that express themselves. And, you know, you don't always have to like art. You don't always have to like what someone's doing to appreciate that they've gone to the effort to create something that they find interesting, expressive, and engaging and beautiful. But then he says, being themselves. This is a man who spends 4 or 5 hours in makeup to be himself. This is an appalling message to send to children. If you wanted to be yourself, you would just be yourself. You know, you would just be your ordinary, natural, healthy self. And there's absolutely no shame in that. You may not live up to unrealistic beauty standards. And, you know, if we try hard enough, those unrealistic beauty standards may begin to wither and die.
Do you like being called a boy or a girl?
I don't really mind.
So being called a boy or a girl isn't really about whether or not we like it. It's definitely, you know, and in fact, his answer is quite difficult because he suggests that there is something fungible about being a boy or a girl, that we could just exchange one for the other. That you can call me a boy, you can call me a girl, it doesn't really matter. It has no bearing on my life. Well, actually, these children need the message that there's something fundamental about the body, that is, you are a boy or you are a girl, but that doesn't stop you from, you know, being a construction worker. It doesn't stop you from being a scientist. It doesn't stop you from being an astronaut. It doesn't stop you from, you know, finding a partner and finding love or anything like that. But it does form a fundamental part of your experience. And he's giving them the message that boys and girls are exactly the same. It's just not right.
I find that as long as people are being kind and polite, then that's what's important. And I always find that whatever someone tells you that they want to be called, it's always best to listen to them and call them the name that they want to be called.
Yeah, so this might, you know, be nice in terms of calling someone the name that they want to be called. So I tell you my name and you're kind enough to use that name and, you know, not call me a rude word or, you know, a nickname that I don't really enjoy. So that's, you know, fair enough. But this man is telling children to accept what adults tell them on face value. So I don't know where the ABC sort of think that this is appropriate, right? To tell children to just accept the word of any adult. So if somebody wants you to call them, you know, if somebody says, I'm a doctor, right? I need to examine you. Should children just be, you know, taking that on face value? Or should we be teaching children to be skeptical, to have trust in their parents and other authority figures who have their best interests at heart, and to kind of, you know, let other people go by the wayside? I think this is incredibly irresponsible of Shane to be telling children just to trust anything that somebody else tells them.
What were some of the hardest things when you were growing up?
I was a young boy and people told me that boys should look or act or even feel a certain way. And I always enjoyed more of the things that the girls liked.
What do you think it is that the girls like? Let's see.
When I was at school, and sometimes people said that boys shouldn't like girls' things, and that boys should like sport and football, and I prefer dancing and singing and colourful, fun things.
That's right.
So are we saying that boys aren't supposed to like those things? Are we saying that, you know, most of the world famous painters, artists, dancers, designers, musicians, that they're not men? I'm really sorry to Shane. He grew up in a really closed off community where men didn't dance, and I think that's a real shame. But using that as an excuse to say that you know, being a girl and a boy or a boy is exactly the same thing, and that this is an excuse for you to impersonate another person, to create a whole other persona and use that persona to talk to children about gender. And no, it's not okay. It is okay to like things that are colourful and that are creative and exploratory and fun. It's
Really cool.
What are some of your hobbies? What are some of the things you like to do?
My favourite hobby is go and get ice cream from down the street.
That's not a hobby, but I like it. I like getting ice cream too. What's your favourite flavour?
Rainbow.
I prefer to do dance.
Yeah.
Did you like to when you were a child?
What kind of dance?
It's ballet, but it's not classical ballet dressing up in tutus.
Do you find when you say ballet, do people sometimes make fun of it and say, oh, do you dress up in tutus?
Yes.
Yeah. People are a bit silly sometimes.
What's your favourite dance move?
When I am dancing, I just like to put on the music and just dance. What's your favourite dance move?
The floss.
The floss? Can you show me how to floss?
The floss is, I get it, like it's, you know, this kid's brought up that he likes to floss, but it's a little unsavoury, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's where you pretend that you have a towel between your legs and move it back and forth. I can't see what the producers were actually thinking by including this in the segment.
I've got this big bit of fabric that makes flossing hard. I'm good at flossing. Can I try it with you? Slide and slide and click, slide and slide and click. I like that. That's a good one.
How do you learn to walk in high heels? Because I've tried it and it's very hard.
It is hard. I think it was just practice.
Well, I mean, if a little girl tries to walk in high heels, they'll obviously be her mum's high heels, or dad's, I suppose. They'll be an adult size pair, and she won't be able to because they'll be the wrong size. Again, why are we talking to kids about high heels? Sorry, dear viewers, you are not getting a good reaction out of this one. I'm completely flummoxed by this point. Why is this something that the ABC have decided needs to be explored by the children of Australia? How to walk in high heels. You know, kids do often put their mum's shoes on or their dad's shoes on and clomp around the house, right? And they're not able to walk in those shoes because they'll be an adult size. But why are we exploring the mechanics of, you know, 6-inch stiletto silver glitter heels with a, looks like a 6 or 7-year-old? How is this exploring gender exactly? Are we going to talk about how it's hard to walk in these shoes and, you know, that it's an unrealistic expectation to expect women to wear these shoes? Are we talking about how Shane wearing these shoes is breaking down the expectations that women should be wearing these in order to be considered beautiful? Or is that just not even on the agenda?
These high heels are pretty high, and the heel's pretty thin. But I think they look pretty with all the sparkles. So.
Oh yes, sparkles. I mean, that's what little girls need to know about, the sparkles.
When you were at school, did girls say, "Oh, this is a girls' club," or did boys say, "Oh, this is a boys' game"? I find that a bit sexist when they do that.
Oh, so that's interesting. I wonder where they picked these kids from. So I would. It's interesting that this kid has got the idea that having something that's just for girls or just for boys is automatically sexist. And I wonder how he's got this idea and why he doesn't understand that sometimes it's okay to say, no, this is just for this one group of people. You know, I think every single group deserves the right to have their own space.
I agree completely. I think, Leon, the world is changing and people are coming to understand that everybody, regardless of your body parts, should be able to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, on the surface of it, this is really lovely. You know, the world's changing. You know, women aren't going to be excluded from certain professions anymore. It's lovely. You know, that's what sort of people of my age would be thinking. This is what people of my age would be thinking when they hear this. They think, yeah, you know, sexism's going away. There are more opportunities for girls. Things are great, you know. But what he's actually said was everybody, regardless of their body parts, right? He didn't say regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. He said body parts, as though we are simply parts that can be changed around and moved and stuck on and taken off again. And he didn't say break the glass ceiling. He said do whatever they want. So when I hear this, I think, yes, you know, things are getting better for girls. And my daughter will have a better time than me, just like I've had a better time than my mother and my grandmother and so on. But what he's actually saying is that people are a collection of body parts and we're going to dissolve all boundaries and we'll be able to do whatever we want.
It doesn't matter what you look like, as long as you want to be who you are and that's what you like to do and you're feeling comfortable with it.
I think that is absolutely perfect advice, Isabella.
Yeah, again, so this is the language of, you know, body image acceptance. It doesn't matter what you look like as long as you are who you are, right? It's such a lovely, wholesome message. But it doesn't matter what you look like. That's not let's accept ourselves. When we're talking to Shane Janek here or Courtney Act, this is, it doesn't matter how many hours you've spent putting on makeup today in order to affect the appearance of the opposite sex, right? And, you know, a very highly stylized, rarefied and sexualized vision of the opposite sex. As long as you're happy with the results, not other people, as long as you're happy, you get to do what you want. So this is not acceptance, right? This is not about loving yourself for who you are. This is 100% about doing whatever it is that you want to whatever it is that you can to transform yourself, to trick others if need be, as long as you're getting the results that you want. It's a terrible message to send to children.
We can all be nice to each other in all different ways.
Oh, I love that.
And I can cuddle my mom sometimes, and then sometimes I can have times with my mom.
Oh, I love having time with my mum too.
I like that I have good manners.
Oh, I like that you have good manners too. It's been absolutely lovely to talk to you both.
Thank you so much for chatting to me, Courtney.
Thank you for chatting to me, Marla. It's so lovely to meet you today.
Yeah, so it's just such a bizarre segment, isn't it? Why on earth would these would the ABC be getting Courtney out to talk to kids about gender? And by gender, we don't mean the social imposition of sex-based stereotypes and roles. That's clearly not what they've had in mind. By gender, they mean doing whatever it takes to affect characteristics of the opposite sex and then deny that sex is a consequential material facet of our beings. And that, you know, if you want to be nice to people, the way that you be nice is by not mentioning the material reality of their sex bodies, and not mentioning the fact that being authentic and being who you really are shouldn't require 5 hours of makeup. And anyway, so initially I did think that they did this video to get points in the ACON Australian Workplace Equality Index scheme. I had a look and I don't think they actually received any points for this particular video, at least not in the 2021 scheme. They may have received points in the earlier, in 2020, that's always possible. But if they've done it for that purpose, just know that there's no actual question for, you know, producing videos to groom children. And so the most that they would have received is 1 point out of a possible 200 for this video. And look at all the people that were involved here. There's a significant financial investment in producing this segment, and they have broadcast this on the networks. It's available on iView. It's available on YouTube. It's still up there, and they're still grooming children and parents with this content. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Kit Kowalski. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And sorry, I did get a little bit flummoxed in the middle there. It was, I just don't know what to say about the shoes, honestly. Just why? Why, ABC? Why? All right, thanks, guys.